for him. So
yeah,
I think for where he's going, it's a very good roto player.
So I agree. I don't think there's objections to what you're saying, Florio, but in points league, I don't want to get involved with him.
Nope.
If you're cool with that, and I think you have to bring up the other player you mentioned, Trevor Story. You had him right ahead or right up below Trevor Story?
Ahead of Trevor Story.
Now, Trevor Story, of course, similar type player. He's done it many times before. He strikes out a lot, but he does play in Colorado. We know that power is real. We've seen it multiple times. Why do you have him ahead of Trevor Story?
Because, first of all, the strikeout rate is nothing compared to what we've seen out of Trevor Story in the past. And second of all, Trevor Story is known for being a power hitter, obviously.
Yes,
he hit a 219 ISO, which is good. It ranked 5th amongst all shortstops with a minimum 200 plate appearances last season. Paul DeJong had a 247 ISO, though, which ranked 2nd, higher than Carlos Correa, higher than Francisco Lindor. Only one shortstop had higher, and that's someone that I told you I want to talk about later.
We'll get to him.
We'll save that one.
Tease!
But I just think, to me, that he's a little bit, I don't know if safer is the word, but I just look at what he did, and I think he would really need to do is cut down on the strikeouts a bit. While I'm not expecting that, he doesn't even need to cut down on them to be a better points leagues player than a Trevor Story. And if we're looking at the power, like I said, he hit 25 home runs in 108 games. Last season, Trevor Story hit 24 in 145 games. So I do think the power, while that's kind of what Trevor Story is known for, I think Paul DeJong is a better power hitter.
You agree?
I'm not entirely sure, because if we just look at hard hit rate and fly ball rates, I mean, Trevor Story was actually better than Paul DeJong at both. And, there comes a point where you hit too many fly balls. It isn't great. But, I think 47.9% fly ball rate for a Trevor Story. He hit the ball hard 40% of the time. So to me, that seems like he should have had more than 24 home runs, especially playing in Colorado. I know he strikes out a ton. That's going to affect his batting average. I think his ceiling at batting average is what we saw a couple years ago,
sure.
270 to 275, but a more realistic range is 240 to 250. But I think he could still hit 30 to 35 home runs just based on how hard he hits the ball and how often he puts the ball in the air. I think he could still hit 30 to 35 home runs. So in a roto league, I guess in both formats, I'd still rather have a Trevor Story, but honestly, I probably don't want either one in a points league.
Okay, there you go. Now, somebody that you do want in a points league, I believe, is the shortstop you've been telling everybody about, and the guy that, much like your Jed Lowry from 2 days ago, at the second base position. I feel the same way. And it's about Marcus Semien, the shortstop, former White Sox, in Marcus Semien.
Former top prospect.
Former top prospect in Marcus Semien. He's a guy that, maybe it's prospect fatigue, maybe it's just he's been around long enough and I just never get excited anymore. That's kind of how I feel at Semien. He's not 24 or 25 like most of the guys we've just 23 as well, like most of the guys we've been talking about. He's 27 years old, the prime of his career. Last year in just 85 games, he hit 10 home runs, had 12 stolen bases, struck out just 22% of the time, while he walked almost 10% of the time. Batting average, it's never really good, and last year it was at 249 with the OBP sitting at 325, where he had a 300 BABIP right around his career average. What makes you like Marcus Semien so much?
He's just so solid every single year. I mean, I get that he doesn't do anything great, but, I mean, just 2 years ago, 27 home runs, 10 stolen bases. He's a career 246 hitter. He's going to be around 250, in my opinion. He has this, I think, reputation that he strikes out a lot. He's been right around 22% each of the past 3 seasons. League average is 21%. So he's just over that mark. And at least he walks. He walks a decent amount. So he has a good eye. He doesn't strike out as much as people think. 9.8% walk rate last year. I think 20 to 25 home runs and 10 stolen bases from a shortstop for where he's going, that is very, very useful in today's climate in terms of, the middle infield position. So I just think he's being undervalued where he's going. He's going after Orlando Arcia. He's going after a Tim Anderson. He's going way after a Paul DeJong. I like Paul DeJong, but he's only done it for 1 year. At least Semien, we've seen him consistently. So, I think 25 home runs and 10 stolen bases hitting at the top of that lineup, which we all expect to be better this year, is going to be a pretty good season for Marcus Semien.
Yeah, I'm with Frank on this one, and I know he said Semien gets the reputation of a strikeout hitter, which is 100% true, but it's not accurate, like Frank said. He chased pitches last year 26% of the time outside of the zone. And 2 years ago, 27.3%. Both of those were better than what league average has been. League average is more around 30%. And the swinging strike rate is around league average of just about 10%. So to me, he's a guy who strikes out league average, which is serviceable. It's fine in today's era because we're seeing players like Paul DeJong, like Trevor Story, who strike out. Trevor Story strikes out almost 34% of the time. Like, that is a very high rate. 22% or around where Semien is at, you can get by with that. And I do think he is an interesting power-speed combo. I think part of the reason he just goes under the radar is because he missed half the season last year. And that drives down ADP.
Let's hear it.
Steamer has him at 252, 21 home runs, 77 runs scored, 68 RBI. You won't take that from your shortstop or your middle infielder? I think that's great.
I think it's fine.
21 and 12, I think that's certainly doable.
It's fine.
77 runs scored and a good offense. I mean, Matt Olson, Matt Chapman.
Can he stay healthy?
We're excited about these guys. I mean, just before last year, he had back-to-back seasons of 155 or more games.
What was his injury last year?
Ooh, I don't even remember.
I feel like he got hit in the hand. I could be completely wrong.
It was like hand or wrist.
I think so too. That was what came to my mind as well. Yeah. It's always the averages that bothers me about Marcus Semien. Maybe I shouldn't pay as much attention.
Quit hating on Semien, bro.
All right. When we come back, the last shortstops that we'll talk about this week before we move on to third baseman tomorrow. There's one super sleeper that Florio absolutely loves. I'm sure Frank's got another one up his sleeve. Stick around. More from the BFFs right after this.
Muscle Maker Grill was made for baseball season. Muscle Maker Grill supplies you with delicious, healthy meals that will give you energy to cheer on your team week after week. Whether you're craving flavorful salad, packed wraps, or guiltless entrees, Muscle Maker Grill has you covered. Hosting a game? No problem. Our catering packages will have your whole team satisfied with flavors ranging from Italian to Tex-Mex and much, much more. Visit MuscleMakerGrill.com for your nearest location and have a winning season.
Scout Fantasy Sports.
I expect Calhoun to be up relatively quickly.
I am shocked. Ryan Rua can hit a lefty. Drew Robinson? Really? I want to go Drew Robinson and Rua. Wouldn't I rather just take my shot with Willie Calhoun? I'd much rather him than Drew Robinson / Ryan Rua. That's just awful.
Yeah, my guess is that the defense was a real concern for them, or I want to see what they say and what the reasons are, but I'm definitely surprised by this because Calhoun was someone I was looking to draft in my leagues to give me big power.
Weekdays 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network and on popular podcast providers.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-292-8137 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-292-8137 for your free author submission kit. Again, that's 800-292-8137.
Watch Craig Carton live, the top 8 at 9 on Twitch.tv from the Fantasy Sports Network Studio 34 every Monday through Thursday at 9 o'clock Eastern. Do you want to be a part of the show? Take part in the Twitch chat room and give me your opinions or call in 844-84-FNTSY. Go to Twitch.tv/Craig Carton Live and get in on the action. Come get some. It's Craig Carton Live, the top 8 at 9, only on Twitch.tv.
Skix sneakers are taking over tailgates and alumni homes across America. Skix canvas high top, low top, slip-on, and kids tennis style sneakers designed in officially licensed college colors and logos is a must-have for every college fan's wardrobe. Fun, fashionable, and comfortable. Whether you're at the big game or watching the game at home, Skix helps fans perform better. Go to Skix.com and use promo code FNTSY for 15% off your pair now. That's Skix.com. Skix sneakers, the soul of a true fan.
Fantasy.
I know you guys mentioned the upside of Lindor, but he needs to start hitting the ball in the air more if he's really going to reach his full potential. Because you do look at the splits, he was better in the second half. He upped his hard hit rate to 33.7% from the 27.7 it was in the first half. But the fly ball rate dropped from 29.7 to 26.8%. I think his power potential is tapped at around 15 home runs. I would like to see an uptick in that to see him reach that 20, and then we could start maybe talking if he can climb even higher.
Weekdays, noon Eastern on FNTSY Radio and live on the Fantasy Sports Network YouTube stream.
Fantasy Factor, the perfect daily fantasy site for the casual recreational player. Flatter prize pool, smaller fields, single entry contests only. Fantasy Factor always has fun contests going on, and this year Fantasy Factor is running a $100,000 home run derby. Sign up today at www.fantasyfactor.com.
Why is that happening? Why are you doing that?
WWW?
There's got to be a reason. Oh, someone used to say WWE like that, right?
WWE. It was like a WCW, I think. They used to call it WW.
Did you see the other day, I think it might have been the pre-show, you probably weren't watching, for Fastlane, Sam Roberts actually said WWF Championship instead of WWE.
Really?
Yeah, he did.
Who is Sam Roberts?
He is a contributor to WWE. He hosts a morning show on Sirius, like Opie and Anthony's show. He's a producer, and he hosts wrestling podcasts everywhere, very, very popular.
His podcast is actually good.
I've listened to some of it. Some of it's a little bit long-winded for me, but some of his I really enjoy his interviews. Those are really, really good. All right.
Free plug
for Sam Roberts. Okay, let me get into another shortstop that I always hate, to be honest with you. Like Marcus Semien is one of those guys, and then there's another one, and that's Zach Cozart. Now, Zach Cozart, a longtime shortstop for Cincinnati, where he was just like there every year. And I remember forever, Zach Cozart hit second. And I'm just sitting there like, why the F is Dusty Mother Effing Baker batting Zach Cozart second? And then Brian Price takes over. And I go, why the F is Mother Effing Brian Price batting Zach Cozart second? Like, Joey Votto needs to bat second. This is such a waste.
I bet you in the offseason, when no one could get a job, you said, why the F did the Angels give Zach Cozart all this money?
But they didn't. The Mariners did, didn't they?
No, he's on
the Angels. See what I know about Zach Cozart? I didn't even know he was on the Angels. But yes.
Probably should know that.
Well, tell me why I should know that.
Because Zach Cozart was really good last year. And it wasn't just last year. I think that we started to see the breakout the last couple of years.
But it is what I said, yes. Why the F did they do that?
He's not even going to play shortstop anymore. He's going to play third base and probably be the best left side defensively with him and Simmons in all of baseball. And that's probably why he got paid, because of his defense. But a lot like Simmons, he had a really good year with the bat last year as well. And I know I often say we shouldn't draft players and hope that they take a next step and bank on that early on in drafts, but I look for breakouts that we see in season. Like, I think Blake Snell broke out last year. I thought James Paxton broke out 2 years ago. I think Zach Cozart had this change, and I think he's had this change for over a year now. But just because he missed so much time and he doesn't put up superstar numbers, we didn't really notice it. He was the shortstop that led all the position in ISO last year with a 251 ISO, just ahead of Paul DeJong at 247, higher than Correa, higher than Lindor. And if you look at Zach Cozart's fly ball rate by season, in 2013, it was 31.6%. Went up the next year to 37.7%. In 2015, when he only played half the season and hit 9 home runs, 42.2%. The next year, he hit 16 home runs, a career high at that point, 39.9%. And then last year, where he ultimately did hit his career high in home runs, 42.3%, which ranked 33rd overall amongst all qualified hitters in the same group as Brian Dozier, Francisco Lindor, Chris Bryant, and he tied with Chris Davis with a K, one of the best power hitters in the league. So the hard hit rate isn't up to par with those guys, but he is hitting the ball in the air a lot more, which to me makes sense that his home run rate would jump up. Plus, last season, he chased pitches outside of the zone just 25.5%, and the swinging strike rate was 6%. Those are both elite ratios right there. And that to me explains why the walk rate jumped up to 12.2%, but the swinging strike rate was only at 15.4%. So he's walking a lot. He's not striking out a lot at all. He's hitting for more power, and he's at a weak middle infield position. I mean, in a points league, I think that this guy is worthy of a starting spot. I actually have him ranked 12th. I have him ranked ahead of all the guys that we spoke about today.
So let me give you some other stats here on Zach Cozart. You heard a lot of positives out of Mike Fleury. Let me give you some of the negatives that I would say. I'll throw it to you, Frank, for a more objective viewpoint. All right, Zach Cozart hasn't played more than 122 games in any of the last of the last 3 seasons. Now, you have seen the power go up each of the last 3 seasons, which is true. 9 to 16 to 24. The average, 258 3 years ago, 252 3-2, and then last year he batted 297 with his BABIP being the career high of 312. Now it's not super higher than his career average of 280, but the 312 BABIP does say something to me, and he didn't even get to 300 there. He got to 297, which is good. But in points leagues where you have an OBP counts at 385, you love it. But that BABIP is that OBP is 80 points higher than it has been at any other point in his career. The obvious questions are, and Fleury addressed a lot of it, but Is it sustainable? Can he do it again in the American League? Now, you don't need the numbers at third base, right? Like, I don't need, as a fantasy
You're not
owner...
using him at third base.
That's what I'm saying. As a fantasy owner, I don't really care if he gives me third base numbers or not, because I'm never going to use him at third base. I'm going to use him as my shortstop. But Frank, what do you think of Zach Kozar? Can he play a full season? Can he repeat what he did last year? Is this power for real? The walks, which Florida pointed out at Points League, are just absolutely fantastic. He doesn't strike out compared to any of the guys we said. Again, fantastic. But will he get on base enough? Will the average be high enough for him to warrant his draft spot right now?
I think that if the walk percentage and his plate skills, the way that they improved, if this is a conscious decision, which, I mean, why else would his career walk rate jump from 5, 6, 7% to a 12% rate? If he does a lot of those things again, yeah, then I have no reason to doubt that he can be a over 10% walk rate kind of guy and give you a solid OBP. But, I am a little skeptical for some of the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, that BABIP, it's not like, his hard hit rate was much higher than it ever was. I mean, 30.8% hard hit rate last year. The year before it was 31.2. The year before that, 25.4. Yet his BABIP, like you mentioned, it was 312 compared to, he's a 280 career BABIP guy. So I think he's more of a, 260 to 270 hitter. I just think, for where he's going, I guess it's not terrible. I think he's a better points league guy, but, buying a guy in his age 32 season who hasn't played more than 122 games, how can you project more than that? That's just the way that I'm looking at it. So I'm a little bit more skeptical. Plus, he's moving from Cincinnati to, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. So can we just call them Anaheim Angels?
Well, whatever you want.
It's just not it's not a positive park shift factor. So,
sure.
For those reasons, he did hit a little bit better.
For those reasons, I'm out.
He hit better at home last year. He hit 327 compared to 258 on the road. Don't know if that was all, ballpark affected, but, it is a negative park shift factor. And, outside of the walks and the OBP, I just don't know what else much he's going to give you.
He was in a points league last year, the 8th overall shortstop in 122 games, Greg. You want to know who he finished ahead of? He finished ahead of Didi Gregorius, Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, Gene Segura, Jorge Polanco, all the guys that we spoke about today.
Yeah.
Brandon Crawford, Tim Beckham, Paul DeJong, all these, Marcus Semien. So I'm not saying he's going to, like in Roto, sure, you don't really want to draft this guy because he's not going to do anything spectacular.
Right.
But in points leagues, he's going to hit doubles. He's going to walk a lot. He's not going to strike out a lot. And he doesn't even need to hit a ton of home runs. It's not like last year his powers went off the charts. I just think if he can keep the plate discipline as it is and he continues to hit the ball in the air as he has the last 3 seasons, I think at the end of the year, this guy is going to outlive where you have to draft him. Because, yeah, I might have him ranked 12th overall at shortstop, but I could probably take him with one of my last picks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Points leagues, if you want to take him, that's fine. I guess I was just looking at it from a Roto perspective. But, points leagues, it's all right. It is what it is, but I don't know.
The thing about Zach Kozar is we all have this preconceived notion that he sucks. And for me, when I first started to do shortstop rankings, I had him very low.
Sure.
And then I looked into him more, and I looked at where he finished and the plate discipline and all the changes he's been making. And
so you're essentially just buying those changes, as Frank said. You're buying it as real.
Yes, and
it's not an aberration. Essentially,
if you strip the name off of him, and you didn't know that I was bringing up Zach Kozar, and I told you all those names, I guarantee you would like him as a player.
Well, I wonder if I saw the numbers the years prior. Serio's age is 32. I mean, he's not a young guy anymore. So. I don't know. I honestly don't know how I would feel. But you want to ask?
This is like your Jed Lowry call.
Yeah,
just like
it is for sure.
You could just take him late. It is what it is. It's a much better lineup than the Oakland A's.
Definitely.
So I mean, I think he's better than Jed Lowry, but 2 different positions. If you're just looking for a middle infielder, this is a points league play. That I'll agree with. I think that's fine.
All right, a couple more guys I want to get to. Before I do, I just want to remind you that every 3 minutes an American is diagnosed with blood cancer. Unfortunately, only 30% of patients are able to find a compatible bone marrow donor within their family. But that's how you can help. Go to dkms.org/FNTSY today and sign up online to register as a donor. DKMS will send you a swab kit, which takes legitimately 1 minute to do. You swab each of your cheeks and send it back to them. That's it. You are done. DKMS will then try and match you up with a person in need of a donation. The process is easy, and best of all, you can actually save somebody's life. Check out dkms.org/FNTSY today to see how you can help. Frank, a guy that you have drafted as your starting shortstop is Tim Beckham.
Don't remind me.
Sorry, man. Baltimore Orioles shortstop, former #1 overall pick for the Rays, never really got it going last year, traded to the Orioles, and then he did. You drafted him as your starting shortstop. Would you recommend that to, well, the watchers?
No. I would not. Like, it's fine as you take a stab late if you think that he can have a Paul DeJong light type season, but this is a guy who doesn't have great plate discipline. He strikes out nearly 30% of the time. For a guy that we expect to hit 20 to 25 home runs, he hits the ball on the ground 48% of the time. I do like the hard hit rate a lot. I mean, when he made contact last year, he was squaring pitches up. His 39.1% hard hit rate ranked 4th at the position behind only Corey Seager, Trevor Story, and Carlos Correa. So he mashes. When he makes contact, he hits the ball hard. He's in a good lineup, projected to hit leadoff right now for the Baltimore Orioles, but that's just because they basically have nobody who can get on base or walk. So I'm not expecting anything near a 278 batting average again. He's more in the 250 range, and considering that he hits the ball on the ground as much as he does, 22 home runs, that might even be, optimistic, I guess you could say. So 18 to 20 home runs, 250 batting average, it's not great.
Yeah, I wasn't buying into Tim Beckham last year, and I'm not going to have him on any teams this year. For everything Frank said, the poor plate discipline, that's something I'm big on with my hitters. The fact that he hits the ball on the ground so much, even though he's making hard contact, if you're hitting the ball on the ground as much as he is, it is hard to, really top that 22 home runs. And I get it, if you're using him at shortstop, you couldn't do worse than getting 22 homers out of him. But if I'm going in that range, I'd rather any of the guys that we spoke about today because they're going to give me some speed as well. So for those reasons, I'm out on Tim Beckham.
Okay, for those reasons, you're out. A guy that I have been super high on, and I always, every time we write something up, I always make sure, I put this guy in the write-up and then rarely talk about him, and that is Yangervis Solarte. He's 30 years old for the Blue Jays. Troy Tulowitzki has already been ruled out for opening day. He was traded away from San Diego to Toronto, so obviously a much better hitting environment. 2 years ago, 109 games in San Diego, had 15 homers, doesn't strike out just 14% of the time 2 years ago, doesn't really walk either, batting .286, OBP pretty damn good at .341. A year later, 20 more games played, 3 more home runs. The rest of the counting numbers not very good. Struck out even less, walked a little bit more. BABIP came way down to 50 points, so the average came down, obviously, as well. So did the OBP. I look at Yangervis Solarte, and if he can find his way into an everyday situation in Toronto, the ballpark is right, the lineup is much better. The fact is, he can hit. We've seen this in a much worse ballpark, in a much worse lineup. Can he play 152 games? Last time he did that was 3 years ago with San Diego, where he only hit 14 home runs, but really didn't strike out at all. This is a guy, and again, I'm a points league type scoring player. This is a guy that I really think Florio fits well in points leagues.
He does. I'm not going to be actively going after him because he just goes so late and there's no secure role. But I do think that there's a person in our home league that calls him the fantasy Swiss Army knife because you could use him at multiple positions. And I think that's in the first half of the season, I think that's how the Blue Jays are going to get the most out of him. I think we'll see him at all positions outside of catcher and center field, really. He could be used all over the diamond until they trade Josh Donaldson and he becomes their everyday third baseman in the second half of the season.
Yeah, originally I questioned where is he going to play every day because, they have Devin Travis and they have Aledmys Diaz as their shortstop right now until Tulo comes back, but that's exactly it. Tulo's always hurt. Devin Travis is always hurt.
Yep.
Josh Donaldson's already dealing with a calf strain, something that he dealt with last year in spring training, which lingered long into the season. So I think because he is that utility player, he'll find a way to play every single day. If he plays 140-plus games, he's probably going to approach 20 home runs, hit 250 to 260. He strikes me as a guy who's better in a head-to-head categories league where you set your lineup every single day. Because if you have a guy off or something, you could throw him in there.
Yeah.
You could throw him at 5 different positions. That's where I would want to target again, Yangervis Solarte, or even in one of these, if they're still going on, these deeper 50-round drafts where you don't have any waiver claims or anything, because if you suffer an injury anywhere, you can just plug Yangervis Solarte in.
All right, a couple of quick shortstops. We have about 2 minutes left in the program. A couple of last-minute shortstops that I want to throw out there. Give me a quick line or two, and we'll move on. The first, Jorge Polanco.
I think he belongs in the same category as a Tim Anderson, Arcia for Roto leagues. I think he brings you that unique power-speed combo late at the position.
Addison Russell.
Ugh. He's probably going to hit 250 with 15 home runs. I think he's a better defensive player than he is offensive, and he kind of gets overrated for fantasy because of that.
Florio, Ketel Marte.
I was a fan of Ketel Marte, but I think the humidor is going to hurt him. I know Chris Owings is their utility player, but Ketel Marte needs to play well or he can lose playing time. So for those reasons, I've cooled off.
Frank, Gleyber Torres.
I think we'll see him later in the season. We were hoping for May. Maybe it's more likely June right now, or until Neil Walker gets hurt or something like that. But he is a top prospect. People have compared him to Carlos Correa. I wouldn't give him that kind of ceiling, but if he gets, let's say if he plays 100 games this year, I could see him going double digits in both home runs and stolen bases.
Pretty cool. For the Mets, Amed Rosario.
I think Rosario could be a late source of speed. I know a lot of people are hoping he can hit towards the top of the order. I don't foresee that at all. I personally think he's going to hit ninth this year for the Mets.
And with that, our shortstop preview is complete. When we come back tomorrow, we'll hit the third baseman. Third basemen are next in our rankings week or weeks here on the PFFs. From a hot honey, Michael Florio, for Frank Stanfield, I'm Greg Sussman. Have a fantastic afternoon. We will see you tomorrow.
Does your fantasy team suck? Maybe you need us, the Fantasy Sports Radio Network, the only free 24/7 fantasy sports radio network.